If we have some kind of destination in mind, some kind of goal that we're trying to fulfill, and we're comparing that to the present moment, working towards that goal, and we're asking which one holds more value, we're probably going to say the destination. Because how could the present moment possibly be any value? It's all about meeting the goal and reaping the rewards. But one of the biggest issues about this comparison of value is that between the present moment and the destination, one of these doesn't actually exist, and it's the one that we're putting all of our emphasis on. And it turns out a majority of the hardship that we face in everyday life can be boiled down to whether or not we are destination centric or present moment centric. You could also say end goal centric or present goal centric. And if that's the case, why? And how can we bring ourselves back to being present goal centric? Today was an interesting day. I spent half an hour sitting in a park just admiring the nature, and I purposefully reinforced as much as I could how much value there was in that moment. Because by default, we're not set up to appreciate the value of what's right in front of us. We're all about postponing happiness, peace, joy, all these flashy things to another moment, because it certainly couldn't be now, could it? So there were 5 things I remember telling myself, which were an attempt to bring all of the attention back to the now and get out of this, postponing mindset. And those things were: 1, I don't need to be anywhere else. 2, I don't need to add anything. 3, it's always now, later never arrives. 4, there's time for this, there's no need to rush. And 5, I'm using my time well. Now let's talk about what these group of thoughts are actually doing. We are purposefully calibrating ourselves to inject as much value as we can from a mental standpoint into this moment, because by default it's going to be doing the opposite. It's going to find every reason as to why this moment is not enough. And the only reason you perceive it to be not enough is because you had that thought and you allow it to drag you down. And if you don't challenge it, then you're going to have some issues. So by being very intentional about these thoughts, I was able to break out of the default pattern, which was all about dragging the moment down. But for this to really work, you have to truly believe what you're saying. Otherwise, the words just kind of come and go in your head and they don't make any kind of actual difference. You're being very intentional about the perception that you're trying to achieve. And so you have to really believe in what you're saying. Because each of those 5 things used to be a belief in the past, but it was their opposite, and all they would do is take the current moment down and grind it down to dust. But now I feel like I have the evidence to back up those 5 points. When I say them, they hold more substance. They are able to make more of an effect in the moment. And so you're kind of guiding the mind into a new paradigm in that way. You're letting it subside in a new point of reference, you could say. And this point of reference challenges the status quo. It challenges the always needing it to be more concept. Because imagine if you didn't ever challenge these automatic thoughts, you're going to run your entire life wishing it was something different. So after that half an hour, I found myself a lot more in flow with what was going on. But then when I started to drive home, I started to fall into this mind state of the going home mind state, which again began to completely disregard the present moment. And it happens because you decide there's no value, you're just focused on getting home. And so in that way you are in this kind of escapist cycle. You are just running from yourself mentally as you're going home. It's a strange state to be in. But again, that's built on the belief that there is no value in the present moment as you're going home. But I really hung on to the fact that only this moment exists. And I tried to break away from the concept of home and going somewhere and a destination that is incoming. And if you can mentally kind of separate yourself from that idea, suddenly the moment is all that's left, and it's like you're just experiencing again. Because what I had realized had happened was I was in this kind of default mindset, which I usually take on the way home. And it's one that's been practiced so many times And a diagram comes to mind from Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural, and it's all about how we have a neurological pathway built for everything that we interact with in life. It's like a shortcut of understanding. It's like, okay, that's what that is, that's what that is, that's what that is. It relates to me this way, blah blah blah. All those kind of things. And I had this concept of, okay, I'm going home now. And what automatically kicked in was the destination mindset, where the present moment gets ground to dust. I know it sounds dramatic, but this is all about injecting as much value as we can back into this moment. It doesn't matter what we're doing. It's just often these mental habits which we've kept up for a long time, which have led us astray in thinking that now is not valuable. Unfortunately, with modern times, the needle has moved towards being destination-centric or end-goal-centric. I think far more than it's ever been. It's all about getting somewhere. It's all about the results of finishing something. But you can imagine if you live your life this way, most of your time is just going to be anticipatory, and it's going to be reducing all the possible value that you could be getting if you had just changed your mindset, had you noticed that the default structures that are in place are maladaptive. So when I was sitting at that park trying to adopt a mindset which brings about a lot more fruits in the present, that third point that I mentioned of it's always now, later never arrives, I think is one of the most instrumental points that if you can really let sink in, will possibly, and I often don't like saying this because it sounds like I'm selling snake oil, but it could change your life. But in order for it to make those kind of changes, it's not enough to just understand that the present's all that exists. It's almost like you have to prove that to yourself. You have to let your experience feed that back to you somehow, or else it's not going to hold the weight required in order for it to bring about a fundamental shift in belief, which will allow you to start injecting more value into the present moment, at least from a mental standpoint, because let's not forget that the value is inherent. It's just about the way that we are mentally displacing the value. And in my case, it was about challenging those 5 things, which were all about taking me away from the present and creating some other destination which would be better. Now I realize I may be overthinking this. Everything I just said in the last 1 or 2 minutes is a bit of a mouthful, but this is what I've found to be true for me. You might not necessarily have to apply it in the same way, but I think the principles are universally applicable. Eckhart Tolle said, "Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have." And the point is that if you aren't able to realize that deeply, like I was saying before, if it's just an understanding like, yeah, that's true, I know that's true, if you don't really know that it's true at that deeper level where I was talking about having that experiential feedback, then it probably won't hold enough weight to bring about serious changes. And so then you may ask, how do you get that kind of feedback? Well, you have to prove to yourself that destinations aren't real, that the future isn't real, that these are concepts. These are mental illusions created on the base of intellectual understanding and not on the base of material reality. One is imagination land and one is real life land. And once I got home, I came across this quote which seriously blew me away. And it was from a guy called Acharya Prashant, who is some kind of guru. And he said the destination has to be the first step in the journey. And he said that the destination has to be the first step in the journey. And that knocked me over. Because that is literally what we're talking about. Because it's all about how the destination is already happening. It's already now. You're just deciding to postpone it. He talks about how we use our present moments as kind of leapfrogs to something imagined. It's a stepping stone to something else. But that something else, even if we do get there, is not going to bring a real perpetual sense of peace and fulfillment. It will be momentary, fleeting, and all came from this reduction of value in the present. In order to overcome those kind of red herrings of mental gymnastics, we first have to know that this emphasis on destination is not going to bring us what we're looking for. And so we want to be able to work towards these goals and put all the emphasis on what we're getting out of it right now. That should be where your focus is. And so I hope those have been some useful ideas to think about. I think this stuff is so exceedingly important, but it's not addressed enough. And I think it's this exact stuff which can bring about some serious shifts in peace.